ago. Do you want to tell us why you came to Ireland, Max? What brought you to Ireland?
Pretty much I'm doing Europe versus Facebook for a while, which is an NGO trying to get Facebook in compliance with European Union law. The biggest problem we faced was not Facebook actually, but the Irish Data Protection Commissioner, who seems to be unwilling to enforce anything upon foreign companies. We had 22 complaints first time around against Facebook for particular buttons. That's the reason why it was 22. And none of these complaints have been decided so far, and they're postponed for almost 3 years now. We're not allowed to see the evidence in the case. We're not allowed to see the counter arguments from the other side. We're not even allowed to see our own files in our own case. That's the situation we right now have in front of the Data Protection Commissioner. That part is undecided, but we now filed last summer one complaint against PRISM, or against Facebook for participating in PRISM. And general European Union law says you cannot export data to the US unless you have an adequate protection of data there. And there's the so-called Safe Harbour Agreement, which says that certain companies, not the US as a whole, but certain companies do have an adequate protection if they sign up under certain circumstances. And we're claiming that Facebook Ireland is forwarding data to Facebook US under the Safe Harbour regime without sticking to these rules. And that was our complaint to the DPC. The DPC has, however, not said that it's justified or not justified. He has simply taken the hot potato and said it's frivolous and vexatious, and therefore he didn't need to decide upon it.
Yes.
And that's the challenge we have right now, that even if our complaint might be not justified, it was at least not frivolous or vexatious. The main argument we're making is that the entire rest of the European Union has taken my legal view that I expressed, that is apparently so frivolous or vexatious. So bottom line is either the whole European Union is frivolous, vexatious, from the European Parliament over the European Commission to other European Data Protection Commissioners, or there is like the Data Protection Commission in Ireland that's somehow off the track. And, so that's pretty much what it boils down to. We'll see how the court decides. The problem is that you can only do a judicial review procedure, which is very difficult, and that's what the Irish Data Protection Commissioner knows. So currently, he's only deciding on 2 to 4% of the complaints he receives. So there you have the possibility to appeal to court if you're unhappy. In all the other cases, he's just sending you an email back. So if you're unhappy with what you're getting back, you have to go to the High Court and launch a judicial review procedure, which is extremely expensive, extremely complicated, takes you years and years and years. You have to fly to Ireland as a foreign citizen 100 times. So he knows no one will ever do that. So whenever he has a complaint he doesn't like, he's just disposing it off, saying it was frivolous or vexatious, or send you some email back. We got hundreds and hundreds of emails from people that have complained to the commissioner from other European countries. None of them has gotten a decision, not a single one. And a lot of them were told that they were frivolous or vexatious. So he's using this claim that is only meant for exceptional cases that are totally absurd on a very regular basis. And that's the underlying bigger picture that we have, that there's an authority that just doesn't want to enforce what it's here for. Which is a huge problem, because Ireland does pretty much protect the data of most European citizens, because most international companies have their headquarters here. And if this enforcement agency is just not doing its job, it's pretty much a problem for all of Europe. And a couple of people have even said it's pretty much like the financial regulation before. It's like, yeah, let's just do them whatever they want to do and make big bucks, but we're going to have the big problem in the end, because right now we have the problem in Europe that we do have fundamental rights, but we're not enforcing them on US companies. So we're pointing fingers at the US and say they're really bad with PRISM and NSA and whatever. But actually these companies are sitting here and we can enforce our law on them. But the government is in the end shying away from it. And it's like, don't touch. Send an angry letter to the President Obama, but don't touch Facebook here. And that's kind of a really absurd situation on a political level.
Yeah. And do you feel maybe that you've been put onto the long finger by the Irish Data Protection Commissioner, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, they're not even picking up the phone anymore. They're not talking to me. They send you letters saying we do not correspond with you further. So they're really trying to get rid of you in a way that's insane. We do have most of this correspondence to our old complaints on our webpage to publish it. And if you read through it, you see that they have really no intention whatsoever to enforce the law on any US company here.
Wow. And do you believe this is due to the Snowden revelations? If the Data Protection Commissioner was to investigate this, that they may have some sort of consequence?
Oh, yeah, it's a political problem. It's a huge problem for these companies because they're sitting on two chairs. On the one hand, they have to stick to the NSA regulation in the US and have to forward all this data. On the other hand, they have to stick to European Union fundamental rights. And of course, these companies sit on the chair of the US because that's the ones enforcing their law, and we're not. And the problem is very much an economic problem, and that's also what the barrister of the Data Protection Commissioner said today, is that this would have had such huge implications for Irish companies. So pretty much our fundamental rights are only good as long as it doesn't conflict with financial interests of Ireland in that case, or whatever the Data Protection Commissioner sees there. And that is really the big problem we have right now.
I was going to come to that. Would so many of these companies like Facebook and eBay, these multinational internet companies who are responsible for people's data, I often think, would they have set up in Ireland if we had tighter data protection laws?
I think it's one of the factors. I mean, the main reason is they all do the double Irish agreement and don't pay taxes. Yes. So our tax bill goes up and theirs goes down. Wonderful. Yes. So that's the one main reason why they're here. I do think that, of course, this kind of general non-regulation, especially in the field of privacy for companies like Facebook that are permanently attacked on privacy matters, is a certain issue that is beneficial for companies to settle here. And it's interesting because the commissioner did give interviews saying that he is actively involved in companies moving to Ireland to help them to meet and blah blah blah, and which sounded to me very interesting because that's not his job. His job is not invest in Ireland. His job is enforce the fundamental rights. But apparently there's a certain mix-up happening in Portarlington, I would say.
I believe before he was Data Commission, he was working with the industries. And
there are people that would say that he's kind of continuing his former job in his office as a Data Protection Commissioner, which was to get investment into the country. Yes. Which is of course not what actually is his job intended under European Union law.
So possibly even Ireland could be trading privacy for jobs here.
That definitely happens, and that does happen in other countries as well. That's not an Irish issue in any way. We do have the same thing when we trade privacy for our for security and these things. I'm coming from a country in Austria where data protection law is very high ranking and in the constitution itself, and so very rigidly enforced in a way. But that's an extreme compared to the other 28 European Union countries. So to give you an example, we had the same complaint in Luxembourg against Skype and Microsoft with the same problems. Tiny country, a lot of investment from international IT organizations, very little interest in enforcing the law and scaring them away. And they were interesting because they've said, yes, the legal argument, which is also frivolous here now, is totally correct, but unfortunately we don't see any evidence that PRISM happened. So they were like, I can't see and I can't hear PRISM, which is kind of the other way to go in that case. Yeah. And I'm going to cut you because I've got to go there. Okay, thanks very much.